Finally, it's that time again. We can finally talk about another UFC event. Obviously, this past week there hasn't been much UFC related content. That's just because there was no UFC event this weekend. It was Thanksgiving weekend, so it makes sense for them not to do that. You know, all these fighters want to celebrate with their families. They want to get stuffed to the maximum. So we don't need no fights just 2 days after Thanksgiving. It makes sense for the UFC to do that, to make that decision, and it's all good. But I don't know. Saturday was pretty uneventful because all my friends are like across the country celebrating Thanksgiving with their extended families. So yesterday I just kind of had nothing to do at all. No UFC, no friends. So I mean, now that it's Sunday, now that it's officially fight week again, we can talk about uh, a UFC event. So we're gonna talk about this in this video. You all saw the title. How I think the loser of the December 3rd fight between Stephen Thompson and Kevin Holland, I think the loser of this fight will retire. And in order for it all to make sense to you, I need to start from the beginning. So obviously, Kevin Holland has retired before, or quote unquote retired. If you all remember, for the UFC 279 event, he went up against Hamzat Chimaev in a catchweight bout. What it was supposed to be, originally, you all know the story. Chimaev was supposed to fight Nate Diaz, but then Chimaev missed weight by 7.5 pounds. Nate Diaz refused to fight him, so what ended up happening was the entire card was switched around, and in this little shuffle of the cards or of the fighters, Kevin Holland, instead of going up against Daniel Rodriguez, was now going up against Hamzat Chimaev, which made sense because they were both just like a pound off in difference in their weight, so it made sense for them to fight. And they had prior beef before that. They had been in a backstage altercation that caused the press conference to get canceled, which had never happened before in the UFC. So that was a first, and there was a lot of hype behind this fight. What ended up happening, or the result of it, was Hamzat Chimaev. The fight starts, and immediately there's controversy because in the video you can see Hamzat kind of like going for a sort of glove touch, but then very quickly going for a takedown and then scoring that takedown. So the issue online was that people thought Hamzat faked the glove touch in order to get that takedown. Which I'm gonna leave that up to the viewer whether you think that's true or not, but that's just the reception online. So what ended up happening was Hamzat just completely dominated Kevin Holland on the ground. The entire fight was just Hamzat wrestling Holland until he got the choke in at 2 minutes into the fight. And then Kevin Holland tapped out and Chimaev was the winner. And a fight like that, a fight that you lose in the first round, you know, that's got to be something that really kills your mind, your mindset. That's got to do something bad to you mentally to be finished so quickly against a guy that you were talking so much about. It's not a good feeling. And I mean, it hit Kevin Holland the hardest. And what ended up happening was just a few weeks after the fight, he declared on his stories that he was apparently retired. You see, you're retired before 30, got paid and I'm out. Next career choice. He was, I mean, from looking at his stories, it really looked like he was ready to move on. And he even talks about it here. So I'm retired. I'm officially retired. Retired from fighting. I had a good fight, good payday, good run. Times are rough for your boy, but I'm really, really happy on the green side. Unless something super duper magical pops up, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm happy with the way things are. So this was an interview about a week, 2 weeks after all his stories came out. So pretty much a lot of people, including myself, were kind of shocked, but at the same time not that shocked that this fight got announced. Stephen Thompson versus Kevin Holland, and I mean it's the perfect fight to make. I can't think of a better fight off the top of my head right now. This is one of the better matchups, and it's one of the better matchups on this card as well. You know, very stacked card, very I can't think of another word. It's just stacked. Stacked is the only word to think of when you think of this card. There's a lot of hype behind it, a lot of big names. It's crazy to me that RDA or Tai Tuivasa or Jack Hermanson, because Derek Brunson pulled out. It's crazy to me that they're on the undercard of this fight. But I mean, who else do you put on the headliner other than Stephen Thompson and Kevin Holland? Kevin Holland just pretty much came out of retirement, so you know, this is a big fight. This is the UFC returning to Orlando. I'm going to be there. I'm going to travel all the way to Orlando on Friday. I'm going to get to skip some school. On Saturday, I'm going to pull up to the event. I know a lot of fighters are going too, which is cool. I don't think I'm going to meet any of them, which is fine. I'm just here to enjoy myself and have fun while I watch this event. I'm going with my uncle because he likes UFC as well. And my bad. This isn't about me. This is about the fight and my theory, because you all saw the title. So we started from the beginning. Now let's look at Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, in order to take this fight, look, he even said it in this interview. I'm retired and officially retired from fighting. Unless something super duper magical pops up, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm happy with the way things are. Kevin Holland was happy with his life, retired, doesn't have to worry about fighting, doesn't have to train. He can just sit back, relax. He got his bag. He got a big payday from that 279 bout, and then he left. So when he talks about that super duper magical thing that popped up, this was it. No, my bad. This was it. This headliner right here was his super duper magical thing that popped up. And you can tell he wasn't. Here's the thing. Kevin Holland wasn't retired entirely. Because if you guys keep up with the roster or the roster watch, you know that Holland was retired, but he never left the UFC roster. He always stayed in the roster this entire time, which means either A, his mind was really that killed and he was really retired, but he didn't have it in himself to leave the roster because he didn't want to let that go just yet, or he played a trick with Dana White to try to get a bigger fight and a good comeback. And there's that theory's been flying around a little bit over YouTube and over Twitter. I saw this really good I know this is lame as fuck, but it was a YouTube short that really explained to me like the possibility of Kevin Holland really just completely tricking Dana White into giving him this fight. You can search it up for yourself. I don't have the video on me right now, and I'm not going to show it. I'd rather you guys show support to the video yourselves. But Kevin Holland likely played the UFC, and he knew he could do it was because after this fight, the amount of money they probably gave him was a lot. The amount of money they gave to Nate Diaz as well, and Tony, and Li Jingliang, and all these guys for having all of their opponents switched up here on the main event, the co-main, and the featured bout. Obviously it costed a lot of money, and for someone like Kevin Holland, who isn't cheap, they likely spent a lot of money for this guy to stay on the card. So for him to retire, it's like, well, damn, we don't want him gone just yet. We just paid him a bag. We paid him a bag in order to keep our pay-per-view alive. Do we want to let this guy go with our money? No. We're going to give him more money so he can give more money to us in return. In terms of, virality or fights or pay-per-view points. Not pay-per-view points for this fight, but like putting butts in seats, ticket sales, hype, this and that, so they can build up their next superstar. So Kevin Holland must be one of the smartest, trickiest guys in the UFC right now. Because now he asked for a fight, asked for the headliner, or maybe he didn't ask for it. He was maybe offered it by the UFC, but he got it. In the end, it doesn't matter because he got it. He's got a fight against a guy like Stephen Thompson, who he could beat, but also Kevin Holland is an unranked guy going up against the number 6 in the world, Stephen Thompson, who's not a wrestler at all. And Kevin Holland has had a lot of trouble with wrestlers throughout his career. And now fighting Stephen Thompson, who is a kind of a karate guy, a kickboxer, which Kevin Holland doesn't have too much trouble against. This is a very winnable fight. Also, the fact that Stephen Thompson is 39 years old, pushing 40, and on a 2-fight losing streak, it's not a terrible fight to make. Kevin Holland could win this fight and could come back into the UFC for good. But what happens if he doesn't? What happens if he loses in any way? What happens if he gets knocked out, submitted, or loses a unanimous decision, let's just say? Well, if that happens, and this is what the whole video is about, I think Kevin Holland retires for good. A loss like this to Chimaev hurt him this bad, right? But Chimaev being one of the best guys on the roster right now, if this loss hurt him that much, then imagine a follow-up loss to Stephen Thompson. What that would do to Kevin Holland's mind. Kevin Holland would retire. I mean, you heard it in this interview. He got the bag and he was good and he left. But if he loses, right, that takes away from his will to fight. And if he gets another bag on top of his bag before that, he's now got more money and less reason to fight and less will to fight. So what's going to happen? He's probably going to retire if he loses this fight in any way. Now, if we look at Stephen Thompson, 16-6-1, as we said before, he is pushing 40. Look here. He made his debut in the UFC in 2012, in February 2012. So he's been in the UFC for over a decade now. As a guy who's been fighting in the same organization for over a decade, and as someone who's pushing 40, oh, my bad. I don't know about you, but if it were me, I'd probably consider retirement. I mean, I'm 40 fucking years old. I've been doing this shit for 10 years. Like, I made enough money. I've proved myself enough. I fought the greatest. I've beat some good guys. And I'm on a 2-fight losing streak. If I lose this fight, like, shit, my old ass can't fight no more probably. I might retire. So, is that the mindset that Stephen Thompson has right now? Probably not. We don't really know. We're going to find out if he loses. But when you think about it more, look at this. Look at all of these fights. There's so many, bro. So many he's had just in the UFC, but he's had more outside of the UFC as well. And being on a 2-fight losing streak against a boring fight against Gilbert Burns and another somewhat boring fight against Bilal Muhammad, he's not taken too much damage in his more recent fights. What that means is he might be able to either A, retire early, and like Stephen Thompson is a smart guy. He can decide to, if he loses the fight, to retire early and before he takes too much damage, or he can lose the fight but keep going because he hasn't taken that much damage. Those are the options if he loses. Of course, if he wins, it's still somewhat of not really a 50-50, but it's still up in the air. Would he retire? Would he not? Because at the end of the day, he's pushing 40. He's had 2 title shot attempts, missed both. He's not getting a title shot anytime soon. That's just a fact. It's a sad truth. So realistically, if either one of these guys loses this fight, either one of them is very likely to retire. And I can't be the only one that thinks this either. I think a lot of people should agree with me on this, that and kind of accept the fact that, yeah, like, it's a sad truth, and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is a legend of the sport and of the UFC. But thinking about it realistically, it's just this might be his time. I mean, you look here, he hadn't fought in a year. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? He's not getting enough drive to fight anymore. He was fighting way more often here in the past. Many fights in many years. And with this one, obviously he fought twice in 2021. It's not bad. I mean, that's decent. But you look here, that's 1 year layoff. And then 6 months layoff, 6 months layoff, and now another year of layoff. It's just it's safe to assume that Stephen Thompson, he's out of his prime. And he's not at that same level, and he doesn't have that same mindset that he had when he was younger, or that he was at when he was younger. And Kevin Holland is not the oldest guy in the world, but he's also not the youngest. Let me check. 29. Actually, he is pretty young. I take that shit back. He's young as hell. But he hasn't passed his prime yet, and he's not in his prime yet either, I don't think. Kevin Holland can reach great heights, obviously, but if he loses this fight, it might just be the voices just might tell him like it's time to hang up the gloves. And same with Stephen Thompson. So that's what this whole video is about. I think it's kind of long, 16 minutes to talk about this all, but it's just my theory. We're gonna find out if I'm right or wrong. We'll see. I kind of hope these guys continue fighting because I like both of them, but obviously Stephen Thompson was becoming older. It might be safe for him to hang it up earlier. It doesn't have to be after one loss. Like if he loses like a decision or by submission, he don't have to retire. He could probably keep going like a few more fights. If he gets knocked out, that's when I'll start to worry. But I think it's safe to assume or predict that the loser of this fight is very likely to hang it up.